I'm always looking for ways to go ahead and create more enjoyment in my training within the band gym. So I'm always looking for inexpensive type accessories that I can add. A simple step stool is a great accessory that I think you want to go ahead and consider bringing into your band gym. I want to take you through just a few ways that I use a step stool and why I think it's a very beneficial accessory to go ahead and consider. First and foremost, as I get older, I find that certain exercises are a little bit more challenging to do on the floor. So as a result, the step stool offers me an elevated surface to go ahead and train with. Let me show you what I mean as an example. If I like to go ahead and do bent over presses, going to the floor can be a little bit challenging. However, if I go ahead and place my hand on the stool, this is going to be a much more comfortable and effective way for me to go ahead and do a simple pillar press. Now, I'm still getting the stabilization through my shoulder, I'm still getting my trunk to be activated, but it's not putting as great a demand on my trunk. As a result, I can do the exercise more successfully. Another great exercise that I like to do is a simple forward reach. And so what I'll do is position myself onto something like this, and I'll do a reach. Now, yes, I would like to be able to reach to the floor, but to go ahead and train my glutes without having to expose my low back to a risk of injury, an elevated surface is going to be a great option. I can go ahead and start at this level, but if I have a second level, I can go on down to that. So a simple reach is going to go ahead and be another example of how an elevated surface is going to be a very effective way for you to go ahead and train. Lastly, we do a lot of trunk stabilization work. Planks, pillars, mountain climbers. I like to go ahead and do a lot of my mountain climbers on this elevated surface. It'll allow me to do things like knee taps where I probably couldn't do those as effectively on the floor because my trunk isn't quite as stable and there's a higher demand on my trunk. So by being on an elevated surface, it's going to allow me to go ahead and train much easier. When it comes to attachment-free training, I love having a stool available. It allows me to go ahead and create a level of depth for my squat. Let me show you what I mean. If I'm going to go ahead and do a simple squat, I'm going to position myself here, pop the band up. It can be a front squat or a goblet squat. And by lowering myself down, the stool creates a depth for me to go ahead and touch and come back up. Now you may say if you're a taller person, that's too low. You can easily add a pillow or something to elevate the surface so that when you go ahead and do your squat, you now have a depth to shoot for and bringing yourself back up. So I love to go ahead and have a stool available for that. Also, I like the stool for step-ups. I might do just a simple half crossover position, and by putting my foot up onto the step, I can step up and challenge myself to go ahead and work on my step-up control and step-up strength as I'm using the stool in that regards. So a stool comes in very handy when it comes to going ahead and helping me with my squatting and my step-ups. One of the final things I'll use a stepping stool for is for my mobility training. Now, there are a lot of mobility drills that are difficult to do using just the floor. But when you apply an elevated surface to the exercise, it allows many of us to go ahead and actually do the activity. Let me show you as an example. Simple side-to-side lunges. By having that stool here, I can go ahead and go through a side lunge versus having to put my hands onto the floor. So I can drop down, and now I have the stool to go ahead and mobilize myself when I'm going through. A simple hip lunge. Most people are going to put their hands on the floor. By putting your hands on the stool, you might be able to go ahead and now really accentuate keeping that back leg straight. You can mobilize this hip. You can even put your forearm onto the stool as needed. If you want, if you have a lower level, you can drop yourself down to here, and then you can place your hands down onto that level. So a step stool is going to really allow me to go ahead and train my mobility. Another way I'll go ahead and work my mobility is I'll have the band and I'll place it up on top and put myself in this position. Now I can go ahead and put my foot up onto an elevated surface and I can stretch my shoulders out, but by having my foot up onto the stool, it allows me to go ahead and increase the mobility of my back hip while I'm going through some simple band mobility exercises in that regard. So again, the step stool very often is going to help and assist with your mobility training. So those are just a few ways that I'll go ahead and utilize a simple step stool in the band gym to help not only augment my training to help me fit my needs, but also to go ahead and just make training more fun, more doable, and allow me as I get older to really continue to challenge my body, but in a much safer approach and safer manner.